what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum, which you should definitely all join. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion right here, right now, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Sleeping Warrior, Chocolate Saiyan, Paul, Flatzoid, and I think that's it for G+. How you all doing?
Yo, yo, yo.
Very good.
And
Good afternoon, hello.
hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're also joined by a whole bunch of people in Discord as well, so hello to everyone in the Discord server.
So let's focus the questions on the Discord server because they never speak, and I don't even understand why.
I mean, it might be an issue with my end, so I can see people flashing. Can you say something, Travis? Could be a technical issue on my end. To be fair, I didn't actually check Discord this morning.
Yeah, probably is.
Okay, right, I'll leave Discord and rejoin. Any chance you can do the housekeeping just while I see if I can sort out my technical issue with Discord?
10th Man, you'll have to do it. I can never remember them.
No problem. Any signs of Earth curvature?
No.
No, not on Earth.
Okay. I guess not from South Africa, right, Flatzoid?
Nope, definitely not from here.
Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No.
None? They say
Maybe on a roundabout on Earth?
Don't they say we're rotating at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator?
They say so, but nobody seems to be able to prove it.
They make stuff up. We're not moving. That's just silly.
So 99% of the Western world is on the stationary surface, and they believe they're moving, though?
Yeah, it's the power of suggestion. Nobody feels movement, but yet they all believe they're spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator while going around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. It's imagination. Nothing more.
All right. Any scientific evidence
Well,
for
I'm-
gravity?
Somebody interrupted. Say again.
Can't have scientific,
Is that someone in Discord? Did I get it working?
can't have scientific evidence of a concept.
Hold on one second. Can I just check with Discord to see if I got them actually working?
Yeah, somebody piped up.
Somebody making the wind sound.
Yeah.
Was that? Yeah, but was. I think anybody flashing? Anybody in Discord?
Do you know what we need? We need the good, the bad, and the ugly music.
I was just thinking of that. Yeah,
that's it.
But yeah, but nobody's even trying to say hello, so I don't know if it works or not until somebody actually says. There we go. No one. They're all on mute. It's because I've rejoined.
I'm not.
Hey, Arwin.
You're always on mute.
Hello.
Nobody going to cooperate in the Discord server?
Someone in Discord, give us a mic check, please.
Jesus wept. Can someone in Discord just say hello? For the love of fuck. There's about 10 of you in there.
I have to wonder why they're even in there.
Well, okay. I give up on Discord.
Can somebody hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Someone just said hello.
Thank you.
Wait.
Well, we have Discord working. Thank you for being so cooperative. Feel free to continue, 10th man.
All right. Any scientific evidence for gravity?
Ha, no.
Can't even define it, let alone. How many people think gravity is a force? All of them. We know that Einstein replaced Newtonian principles with bendy space-time. Well, honestly, nobody refers to gravity in the Einstein context. They all revert back to the pre-World War I position, and it's been superseded, guys. Superseded doesn't mean refined; it means replaced, as the definition clearly states. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, but it's basically one unproven concept replaced by another unproven concept. So there never was any scientific evidence in the first place.
Anthony, why did they replace it? Why did they go from Newtonian to Einsteinian?
I have no idea. I wish I knew that answer. Do you know why they did it?
I'm trying to see if it had to do with his relativity in any way, shape, or form.
Well, yeah.
Because mass doesn't attract mass.
Because Newtonian can only work for flow.
Say that again, Flatsoid.
I said because Newtonian can only work for close approximations, not far. So they needed to work out something else for the planetary systems.
Any comments other than that? All right. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No. It's worth pointing out Ranty's point from yesterday. Ranty made up. I heard Ranty talking. Is it yesterday?
Yeah, I hear you.
And he was saying about how the seismology reports.
Thanks. It just seemed a bit quiet. That's all.
Yeah, we hear you.
Say what?
All sorted on Discord now.
It just seemed a bit quiet. Normally, there's always someone talking here.
Someone was talking.
So Ranty brought up an article that was referencing the Quadrilla drill site in Lancashire, and they're trying to do fracking, and they've been telling everybody how safe it is, and all the protesters have been getting arrested because it's not safe. And there was a back and forth that went to court numerous times, and in the end, they were allowed to carry on doing it. Problem is, it started causing earthquakes that were bigger than the magnitude that they were allowed in the limits of what is considered to be safe. So it's been cancelled. And the reason for the earthquakes happening against the science was because seismology predictions were not reliable. Yet it's the seismograph or seismology predictions that they use to justify the belief that there's a molten iron core. Yet if you look in the Quadrilla drill site in Lancashire that's just been abandoned, you can just now recently, like in the last couple of days, you can see clearly that the seismology predictions were unreliable. Yet that's their citation for proof of a molten iron core, seismology. Boom.
How deep were they fracking? Do you know the depth of the fracking?
I don't know. It's been on that long now and it's changed that many times. I've not even kept up with it, to be honest. It was a big deal and now it's stopped and it seems to be done. But
well, to put a summary on it, it wasn't as deep as the deepest hole ever dug, was it?
No, and they didn't get that right. So if they're digging down as far as 8 miles with the deepest hole that ever drilled in the Kohler super deep borehole, and they're basing results on sorry, my eBay's flicking off. They're basing the results based on seismology. Well, we know that when they're fracking for natural gas in Lancashire, their predictions based on seismology and seismograph interpretations were unreliable, and they were having big earthquakes as a result of it because they were getting them wrong. So if they're going to argue for seismology to prove P waves and S waves are only possible on it, and Conspiracy Cats pushes this point, well, they're not reliable. So he's pushing stuff that's not reliable, and people just like they take it out of his hand like a bird feeding seed. And I'm like, everybody in this topic seems to be on their side, happy to accept the convenient lie, no matter how ridiculously crappy the quality of the evidence actually is. It's ridiculous.
So basically what you're saying is if it's not reliable near surface, how is it going to be reliable deeper than that?
I'm saying that seismology is not a good argument for molten iron core. It's rubbish, but people seem to want to believe it.
Well, it's unreliable.
Of course, it's terribly unreliable.
All right, any evidence for the distance of the sun?
Not a chance.
Why not?
Because nothing lines up. There's just no direct indication that it is in any specific position, no matter what you presuppose the Earth to be.
What do we have a ballbusters on this? Spectroscopy? Yeah, say that word slowly.
You can always assume things about that light that you see based on some deduction, but that doesn't prove that it is a physical object in any specific location.
I was trying to tie the spectroscopy, if I said it wrong, with the last question with the seismology. They got instruments that they say can do things, but they don't.
Next question.
Any evidence of the radius of the Earth, the R value?
No.
Discord?
What kind of radius are you talking about?
Spherical.
Ooh. Now that's presupposing a lot.
That's unfortunate because then we would have to go back to question 1 where we asked, is there any signs of Earth curvature, which we would need for in R value? Yeah, we don't got that. So it's unfortunate. That's why we're here.
Anybody in Discord want to say anything before I move on? Okie dokie. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
All right, I'm gonna hijack this point because I've been listening to different people's conversations in recently on both sides of this, and ballers hate this question, and flat earthers are not arguing it well enough. It's really simple, right? One of the parameters is the vacuum of space, 10 to the minus 17 torr, basically a zero value. Ballers claim that there's a gradient, therefore it's okay, and you can have a gradient, therefore that means you can have gas pressure in an open system. And they referenced going outside, right? The problem is you can't have a gradient in the first place, and we've been drumming that point home for ages, and that's getting through. The other point that's not getting through is the other parameter is the vacuum of space. Now, if you go onto Google and type in what is the world's biggest vacuum chamber, you'll come across the Glen something center, Plum Glen Center or whatever it's called in, I think it's in Ohio in America. And it's
Sandusky.
Pardon?
Sandusky, Ohio.
It's the one where they did the feather and the bowling ball because it's the tallest one. Now, if you look at the construction of that vacuum chamber, that's essentially space, right? But they have to have the chamber to make the vacuum. Well, it's the same point for the ball earth gas pressure gradients that we're in, because you can't have the vacuum without that 15 foot thick concrete walls. You can't have that vacuum.
I think it's 8 foot thick, reinforced, aluminum shell inside, and the doors weigh 5 million pounds each, according to QE.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the day, that's the vacuum of space that represents, and it doesn't even get that far because it starts leaching the atmosphere through the thick concrete eventually anyway. But that's the size of the vacuum chamber that is the biggest one in the world for them to get somewhere close towards the vacuum that they tell us is space. And that vacuum in space, you can't have the gas pressure that we're breathing next to it, because if you could, you wouldn't need the vacuum chamber. So remember that it's not the open pressure or the gradient in our atmosphere. It's the open container in the vacuum of space, and it fucks off into space and it doesn't come back immediately. So don't be afraid to ram this point down their throats. These ballers refuse to acknowledge that the vacuum torr value of space decimates their argument when it's an open system. You need a container and or a mega powerful force that you haven't even got. Even if you had gravity, it's nowhere near powerful enough to compensate for the vacuum, the differential. They can't have the gradient. They do need a container. And when you go outside, we must be in a contained environment because you can't have it. It all disappears into space. So don't be afraid of ramming it down their throats. Don't be afraid of telling them it's a vacuum. It's not the gas pressure that we're breathing that we can demonstrate with an open pipe. It's the vacuum. So go into that big, massive vacuum chamber in Ohio and then try opening the doors when it's got the full vacuum set to it, and you won't be able to do it. But if you did it, it'd just immediately suck you inside or blow you inside from the outside, whichever way around, it doesn't matter. The point is that you can't have it, and you need 8-foot thick containers to be able to contain that vacuum. And that's what they're telling us is that we live in. It's completely and utterly absurd, and it is our strongest point. And obviously, gravity can't be the container. I don't know where that's come from. I think it's fight the flat Earth, but gravity can't explain this. It doesn't do anything. It's an effect that we think we're seeing, and there's no testable science to demonstrate what gravity is or even define it. So don't let them get away with it. It completely destroys their model, guys.
Anthony, do you know where they say?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you say that again, Tony?
Hold on.
Just
Go.
kidding.
10th man, then Highlander, please.
Yeah, Anthony, the ISS. Do you know what they say the vacuum of space is where the ISS is 250 miles up?
Yeah, it's almost a vacuum of space, isn't it? It's the beginning of like what they call deep space, isn't it? Once you get to above the Kármán line, and they're getting up towards the Kármán line, there's very little difference between it on their model.
So they're saying that they're not in it fully, but they're near it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now if we take the moon missions, they went past that because they obviously went to the moon, they say, correct?
So Philip Cooper just puts there, that's conflation. The structure has nothing to do with the vacuum. It's essential. You can't have that vacuum without a structure, right? The structure is necessary to resist the 14.7 psi externally. Yeah, we're in that 14.7 psi externally, aren't we, Phil Cooper? Exactly, blow you inside, as you said it. Yeah, that's the point. If there's 14.7 psi on the surface of the Earth, on the outside of a ball, and that's existing next to the vacuum of space, even with a gradient that can't possibly exist, it all gets burst into space. Now, you can deny as much as you want. It doesn't change the fact that you can't have gas pressure without a container. It kills your model. You can't be a ball Earth believer if you realize the strength and magnitude of this argument point. It kills your model, guys. Sorry,
Indeed. And the only way for the gas not to burst off is if the entire rest of the container would have to be outer space, according to their model, would be filled up with some super light, very undense gas, and then maybe it would kind of stay in place or something. But yeah, a vacuum is just a vacuum, and there's no way it's going to stick to that ball. You'd have to subject that little ball to some insane forces, and gravity is not one of them. It's not even a force. And even if you presuppose it's a force, then it's too weak a force to ever be able to do that.
Back to my point with Anthony, if I may. So how thick were the walls?
Oh, sorry, you're still on the same point. My bad. Highlander's just waiting in the wings. That was all. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. I'll let Highlander come in after. So Anthony, how thick were the walls of the Apollo missions that supposedly went to the moon? Were they 8 feet thick?
Well, depending on the astronaut that you ask, it could have been the size of, 3 sheets of aluminum foil?
Well, thank you, Chocolate. I was
Reynolds
looking for
wrap.
that. So in the 10 to the minus 17 part of the Tor, which is the distance between the edge of our Earth to the moon, that part, 3 layers of aluminum did well, versus on Earth, you need 8 feet just for 10 to the minus 6. Because that's what I think that chamber in Sandusky is, 10 to the minus 6, if I recall. Something wrong with those numbers, would you say, Highlander?
Yeah, but is it not switched the other way round? I mean, is the pressure not on the inside of the container once you go up into space? Whereas on the Earth, you've got the pressure on the outside of the container pushing inwards.
What?
That was my point. It takes 8-foot walls reinforced in an aluminum shell and doors that weigh 5 million pounds each to fight off 14.7.
Right, so how much would you need to fight off if you took that same container up into space.
Well, that's what chocolate
You
said.
wouldn't
3
need-
layers
you
of
wouldn't-
aluminum
you
fights
wouldn't
off
need
10 to
any
the minus
container, would
17
you?
torque.
Hold on, just let
Because you
hold
don't
on.
have any pressure pushing from the outside in.
Do you want to conclude your point or reiterate your point, Highlander? HB.
There's no proof there's any space outside of
I was
the
going to get to that,
container.
Arwin. Well said.
I want to know how Highlander is still actually a ball earther. You understand that gas pressure can't exist all by itself. It
Don't
requires
even
the
get me
container.
started with this.
There's a great long silence. He's doing it same thing he does to me. So there was a long silence. You were asked to reiterate your point. You chose not to. Now Anthony's talking. Please don't interrupt him. Just because he's shitting all over your religion, just let him.
I just want to know how you defend your position when you know that you need a container for gas pressure.
And a
what do you think
container,
of
obviously,
chocolate?
as Tech
They'd
Man
like
just
to know-
Hold on,
described.
chocolate. Hold on. Go ahead, Highlander.
Well, I asked Sleeping Warrior, what does he think the shuttle is? That's a container for the gas pressure, is it not?
Yeah, but is the container of the? Did you say the shuttle? Is that what you said? The shuttle?
Yeah, when the shuttle goes into space, yeah,
Yeah. Is that
the
8
roles
foot
are
thick?
reversed. The pressure is on the inside, not the outside. Yeah.
The shuttle doesn't
I know
go
for a
to space.
pseudoscientist like you, Sleeping Warrior, that's hard to grasp.
Okay, look,
Yeah,
no need for the
but
ad homs. No,
that's
just
how
let
it
him
works.
respond. Thank you,
So-
Highlander.
We know that the Ohio vacuum chamber is like 8 foot thick with steel rebar reinforcement with whatever extra reinforcements it has, right? We know that's what's required to contain that pressure or the vacuum, stopping them from merging into each other and immediately equalizing with their own pressure, right? That's what's required on Earth. You're telling me that the tin can that's supposed to go into space has got the same strength, stopping it from immediately bursting the vacuum into the vacuum of space, yet it's made of little tinfoil aluminium, right? Are you serious?
4 layers of
And-
aluminum for the lunar
Hold on,
lander.
chocolate, hold on.
And,
It's just
and
4 layers
Sleeping
of
Warrior,
aluminum
you
for
as a
the lander.
pseudoscientist know for a
Whoever's
fact
rumpusing Highlander,
the
can you stop,
space shuttle
please?
is
I just want to
made
hear
of a couple
Highlander's
of-
response. So, can you just stop rumpusing Highlander, whoever's doing it in the Discord? I don't care who. Just let Highlander say his piece. Thank you.
I just want to know how Sleeping Warrior knows that what the space shuttle is actually made of.
Well, I can compare the size of the vacuum chamber in Ohio with the thickness of the metal that they tell us that the shuttle's made of. And I can quite comfortably say that they are nowhere near similar. Yet we know that to get anywhere near the vacuum of space, the vacuum chamber in Ohio is 8 foot thick in concrete, rebarred, strengthened, you name it. It's the Superman chamber. That's what's required to separate the gas pressure that we breathe from the vacuum of space. Well, there's pressure inside that shuttle when it takes off. So what do they do with the pressure? Do they exhaust it out somehow? And what do they do? How do they do that? You can't have the pressure without
Well,
containment
how
somehow.
are you testing that you need the same strength container for the pressure when it's in the inside compared to when the pressure's on the outside?
Yeah,
What-
I can answer that, Tony.
Oh, let
Although this is
Sleeping
a
Warrior.
Great presupposition on the audience.
Arwin, just let Sleeping Warrior. Thank you.
So are you trying to tell me that the direction of the travel of the pressure over the vacuum is in any way different one way over the other?
Well, one's pushing out and one's pushing in.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a big difference.
What is the difference?
I just want to know what test you did to show that you need the same strength of container, if that's your claim.
I looked. So what? For the benefit of the audience, he hasn't answered my question. I asked him what was the difference that would be required one way over the other, and I didn't get an answer. He deflected by asking me a question, and the research that
You answered my question by asking that. I asked you how you compared or what test you did to prove that you need to have the same strength of container. Yeah, and you answered that with your question. Yeah,
looked at
that's
the
what you
vacuum
flat
chamber.
earthers do. You don't answer the question; you just ask another one.
I looked at
So
the vacuum
what
chamber in
test
Ohio.
did you do?
I looked at the vacuum chamber in Ohio. I looked at the strength of the vacuum that they can achieve, which is not space. It's not really close to space either. It's the best that they can get. But ultimately, I can see by virtue of the size and the scale of that chamber that you need a significant amount of reinforcement to have the differential that they tell us is the Earth's pressure of 14.7 psi compared to the vacuum of space. It's required to have a container, but we don't have a container on your model. So my question is, regardless of the size and the scale of the container, which we know is huge, how do you have the gas pressure on an open system without gravity as a force and without a container? Please.
Right. So your answer to my question is you took a look.
Yeah, I looked at the size of the vacuum chamber in Ohio to see how they could do it, and it requires a shed load of containment with concrete rebar, steel walls, and basically a fortress. So my question is, where's the fortress on Earth to separate it from the vacuum of space, please?
Hold on. I'm still trying to understand your answer to my question. Yeah. I
I've
asked
answered it
you
3
what
times.
test
Hold
you
on,
did.
Sleeping Warrior.
Yeah. To prove that you need the same strength of container when you send a shuttle up into space when the pressure is on the inside rather than the outside.
Fine.
And your
Okay,
answer to that
hold on,
is
Highlander,
you took a look.
Highlander, hold on 1 second. Shout out to Earth is Seriously Flat for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. It says girls won't procreate with globe zombie animals. Well, thank you for that. Really appreciate it. We've come full circle. So you're now asking, you've then made that declaration that was then followed up previously on this little roundabout by Anthony asking you what the difference is. What's the difference between the shuttle with the pressure pressing out, trying to go into outer space, or the actual concrete room and rebar just described by Anthony? He asked you in response to that what the difference is. That's where we got last time. You felt you didn't get clarity to your question. He's given it you and told you what he's looked at, and you've said, so you've looked at something. So yes, so we're at the same place, just you, Highlander, now need to clarify what the difference is between the two. Do you want to re-ask your question, Anthony?
And let's not forget, you made the assertion that there was a difference, and I asked what is the difference when the polarity is the opposite way around, please.
Right.
Right. So when you said you had a look, what is the pressure within inside the
We've
rocket?
covered this. He's covered it. He's told you 10 to the minus 6 torr compared to the region of space that the shuttle would be in, about 10 to the minus 8 torr. Covered. Clarified. Your question still stands to you, Highlander. What's the difference? Pressing out versus pressing in? Who cares? Well, no, I won't lead you. You tell us what the difference is.
Well, the difference is the pressure is pushing out the way. Yeah. And there is nowhere near the same kind of pressure within the shuttle as what you would experience here on Earth.
Okay, so can I just let me just get it straight, just then and let Anthony respond. So you're saying the force inside the shuttle pressing out isn't anywhere near as much as the container that is the vacuum chamber described by Anthony with the outside pressure trying to press in. You're saying that the force pressing in is significantly more when pressing on the walls of a thick vacuum versus the pressure inside the chamber that is the shuttle in Narnia with the gas pressure trying to press out into the second law of thermodynamics violation. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I took a look.
Okay.
And that's apparently good enough.
No worries. Anthony has already responded to that also and pointed out in conclusion that if you're saying there's a difference between the container that is the space shuttle versus the container that is the vacuum chamber, then how do you have gas pressure without a container on Earth? That was his response.
Well, I asked what test he did.
We've covered this. We've covered this. We've covered this. We've covered this. He's got a question to you. How do we have gas pressure without a container, given that you're arguing about the difference in outward pressure versus inward pressure when describing two different containers? and two different, apparently, vacuums. Anthony's asking, how can you have the gas pressure in the first place if there's no container around Earth in your religion?
Right, so his answer to me is by asking, how can you have gas pressure without a container?
No, he described quite eloquently how he made his comparison, what he had looked at, what values were stated, and the rhetoric of your space vacuum. Your response being, there's a difference between pressing in and pressing out. Anthony's response has just been summarised now twice by me, that it makes no odds about the difference between these two containers. Your marble in a space vacuum doesn't have a container. So how do we have gas pressure in the first place if there's no container around Earth? That's his question. You've dodged it 3 times.
Well, there is no container around the Earth.
We know around your religion of Earth there's no container, so the gas would fill the space. So, no, we're not a marble in a vacuum because the gas would fill the space. So just saying we don't have a container isn't going to be an address to the fact that you need one, as detailed in this argument with a vacuum that's got a container and a alleged space shuttle in a second law of thermodynamics violation that's also a container, so it can have gas pressure. Apparently the shuttle needs to be a container, so the men inside that container can have gas pressure when they're in the vacuum that doesn't exist. Yet here on Earth we don't need a container, apparently. Well, that's utter horseshit, isn't it? The gas would fill the space the same as it would for the shuttle, which doesn't exist and doesn't go to space. That's a second law of thermodynamics violation. That system has us with gas pressure next to a vacuum. A nonsense impossibility.
Okay, so if you're saying that the gas would fill the space, have you actually tried?
It's called the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy would increase. It's a natural law. I don't say it. It's a natural law. It's called the second law of thermodynamics.
So have you actually tried the experiment?
Are you dumb? Natural law. Did I say the word experiment? What's the difference between a scientific law and an experimentally valid piece of scientific evidence? What's the difference? Go.
Natural.
Is this why you're not letting me ask?
What's the difference between a natural law and a valid experiment, i.e. scientific... You're just talking through me, asshole. Now you've been smashed. I'm asking you. I didn't use the word experiment, you did. That was your word. Have you done the experiment?
Is that because you've never actually done an experiment?
I'm asking you in regards to this argument and the rebuttal regarding the second law of thermodynamics, which is a natural law, if you appreciate the difference between natural law and scientific evidence, i.e. experiment. Do you know the difference or not?
Right, so what experiments have you done?
Do you know the difference between a natural law... I'm going to kick you out because it's the end of your time here, Highlander. Highlander. There's no experiment in... Highlander, you're not listening. You're rumpusing because you're being battered. I've asked you a question. I'm going to ask you a third time. Then I'm going to remove you from the conversation if you don't give me a closed answer. Do you know the difference, yes or no answer, between natural law and experimental scientific evidence? Yes or no?
Yes.
What's the difference? Tell me.
Right. So now I answered your question. Have you ever
What,
done
with a yes?
experiment?
With a yes?
Oh, here we go again.
With a yes. That's not an answer. What is the difference? Tell me by giving me citations for your explanations, or at the very least an actual answer beyond a yes. Yeah, I do know the difference between scientific evidence and natural law. Well, that's not going to suffice. I now need you to demonstrate you know that difference by telling us what they are. Both of them. Go.
Why should I answer your question?
Because you've asked me for experimental validity to a natural law, you complete fucking retard. And if you understood the difference between the two, you wouldn't be asking me for experimental validity to a natural law, you complete idiot. Clearly you don't know the difference, or you wouldn't be asking me for experiment, now would you? Because you'd know that it's not a process of the method that is science. It's a natural law.
Highlander,
But you're the
look,
one that's claiming that the law is being broken.
Sorry, there's no experiment. You've asked me if I've done an experiment to prove this, I'll say it again for about the 5th time, natural law, not experimental evidence, which is what you're asking me for, demonstrating admirably you don't know the difference between the two.
You're the one claiming that the natural law is being violated.
You asked me for an experiment.
You're the one making that
No,
claim.
you
right?
asked
So
me
I'm
if
asking you
I
to
backed
give
it with
evidence
experiment.
being
He's an
violated.
asshole. You asked me
I
for an
wanted-
experiment, didn't you? You asked me for an experiment, didn't you?
I asked you if you have ever tried an experiment, Nathan.
Yeah, and we're talking
I know
about the
Sleeping
second.
Warrior doesn't
In
have a clue how
response,
to do
oh, he's never going to
scientific
shut up.
experiment.
In response to me pointing out that it's a natural law, the second law of thermodynamics, your response, have you ever done an experiment? Why? We're talking about a natural law. Clearly you don't understand how natural laws come to pass and how scientific evidence comes to pass. They're different and you don't realise that.
Right, but if we've actually been to space, then
Can't go to space. It's a violation of a natural law. The second law of thermodynamics, the one you whistle past and ask me for experimental validity. You've not addressed it. You've now asked me about space, presupposing this violation of a natural law, having not defined the difference between experimental data and natural laws, and now you're going to go on to presuppose your fundy belief in a sky vacuum, having not addressed a single sodding word I've said about this natural law called the second law of thermodynamics, which would dictate that the gas would fill the space if the Earth was in a vacuum without a container.
not if you have a pressure gradient. There is no.
That's bollocks! It's
How
bollocks.
do
You
you have
can't,
pressure
you
gradient?
can't have a
Oh,
pressure.
wow.
Go ahead. Actually, this is where I step
Never
back.
ends.
Everyone else, this is where Anthony gets the reins back. Go ahead, Anthony.
How do you have the pressure gradient in the first place without the containment?
Oh, you're a pseudoscientist. Until you give me the details of your egg experiment, then yeah, nothing you can say.
I'll say it once
has
more. I'll
any
give him a
weight
last chance,
whatsoever.
Anthony. Then he's got
Yeah.
it. Then he's
Oh,
going to go.
yeah.
He's just done the same thing to
This
you.
is what
Hold on,
y'all
everyone in
got.
G plus. Can you not hear me? No, he's done the same thing to Anthony as he did to me. Sorry, you don't know the difference between
No,
natural
I've
law.
asked Anthony
That's where he goes.
several
That's where he goes.
times.
That's where he goes.
Yeah.
He's ignored me. I've moved past it back when he gave a straw man argument. Now he doesn't enjoy the privilege of talking anymore. Because no, you haven't addressed the natural law that is the second law of thermodynamics, which would dictate that entropy would increase and the gas would fill the available volume. Now, in your religion of a marble in a vacuum, the gas would fill that space. That's the end of this argument, not addressed by Highlander, just rumpused when it gets to the conclusion that we admirably demonstrate, or in this instance, Sleeping Warrior admirably demonstrates that we've got fundamentalist religious zealots who will circle jerk us around and just assert straw men about gradients. You can't have gas pressure gradients without a container. It's a delta of gas pressure. First you have gas pressure, then you have a gas pressure gradient. The gas would still fill the space without a container. It's not an address to the argument. He hasn't addressed the argument, and Anthony summarised it beautifully before we went on this merry dance with me getting my blood pressure up, rather than Anthony. No, circle jerking assholes. You've got to address the fact that it's a violation of a natural law. It's not backed by experiment, it's a natural law. But these twats don't know the difference between the two, and will ask me if I've got an experiment. No, it's a natural law, never to be defied ever.
What's the answer to my question, Highlander?
I've excluded him. He's just going to circle jerk you and tell you about pressure gradients, which is a delta of the question you've asked. Doesn't address your question about where you get gas pressure from. He never will address it. He won't get gas pressure from a containerless system in a vacuum. So he's just got to rumpus and talk through us, and I'm tired of it. He's had 2 or 3 opportunities. That's the end. Did we conclude housekeeping?
No, we got one more. Can anyone give a single viable scientific hypothesis in the entire history of either astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, sir. They're observational sciences. They're not actually science. Those that think that the breeding patterns of birds are some kind of science, that's a mistaken belief, otherwise known as pseudoscience.
Well said. Okay, so
Anyone else?
There's,
Go on. Go
there's
on,
also plenty of models which are also not science.
correct. I'll do a quick plug and then anyone free for all. So over the next few weeks, hopefully on a series of videos, myself, Sleeping Warrior, and Quantum Eraser will be doing an expose on each and every one of the housekeeping questions. So I've got a tentative agreement that Anthony will actually do this with us, so hopefully he'll join in the fun. But essentially it was us three, along with admittedly a shitload of help from everyone else on the panel, but I'm sure everyone else will concede. If you feel butthurt about this, speak now or forever hold your peace. But us three will do a fairly concise discussion around the whys and wherefores of how each of the housekeeping questions A, come to pass, B, absolutely annihilate the heliocentric religion, how the phraseology is used, and how the counter-arguments may come, or more likely, the misapprehension of what's actually being stated in the question. So, in other words, an all-encompassing, detailed expose of how each question makes you win an argument when you're attacking a globe head in terms of their fundamentalist religious assertions that the Earth is a sphere in a sky vacuum called outer space. So that will come hopefully once we've tied down the times and whens and wherefores between myself, Quantum Eraser, and Sleeping Warrior, and anyone else who moans and says, no, I had a major part in this, which may or may not happen, but either way.
I had a major part in this, and hey, you need somebody to interrupt John regularly, so...
Maybe.
Long overdue.
We'll take a
great
vote.
Tool
yeah,
for
and I
everyone
want
to
chocolate
use.
with me as well. We need to tag team with that.
I will do one with chocolate and Arwen's separate comedy version, and we'll never air it.
Well, how about what we'll do is
I'd be interested in doing my part.
How about we do it this way then? How about if Anthony, myself, and Quantum Eraser dissect up concisely, like in a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute slot, the housekeeping question, and then the other participants who are obviously around and had a part in developing those questions come in after the concise summary to discuss it more generally. So it might end up being that each show becomes an hour, but the first 15 minutes will be a really, really concise, probably just Quantum Eraser mostly, a presentation style, and then we'll discuss it together. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Like a good introduction summary and then an open discussion about it. Great.
Exactly.
Can I suggest something? If you have a short version so that it's chewable and digestible by who we want to send it to, 5-10 minutes long at the most, and then followed by an interaction that goes into it to follow, makes the hour or whatever long show. So you have two versions of it. You have 10-minute clips that we can send out to people to like a short, small, digestible version, because most people won't sit down. When they see an hour or something, they're not going to watch the whole thing.
The other thing to be aware of is when these points are brought up, they never answer that question. How do you have the container, the gradient in the first place? And it's that refusal to answer the question that they obfuscate. They take it in any other way, any other direction humanly possible, rather than answering the question, which is why Highlander said, you're a pseudoscientist because of blah, blah, blah. Pin them down on the gravity, not on the gravity, pin them down on the container bit, the gradient bit, because you can't have the gradient in the first place. They'll never answer it. So when you realize that they'll never answer that part, you've got them there, and they just won't let you win. They'll do anything to wriggle out of it. Don't let them.
Ask them what the difference between the Earth traveling through space is to a shuttle traveling through space. What's the difference between the two?
None.
Containing
Nothing.
gas.
Both would require containment if they're to have gas pressure. Correct. Exactly, Jibby.
Well, notice there's a certain force that they used to argue about, which would be the cause of that gradient and the air pressure, but they don't argue about it so much nowadays. Anybody notice that?
Yeah.
They kind of just avoid it a little bit, like sidestep it a bit.
Well, that's what Highlander did. He knows that you can't mention gravity, so he has to obfuscate when I say, well, how do you have the gradient in the first place? They all do the same thing, and they'll find some reason to call you mutt names or call you mum or whatever, but they'll wriggle out of answering that question at all costs. So just say to them, well, where do you get the gradient from? And don't let them obfuscate the point. Make sure they answer.
Well, he went so far to dance away from the point that he brought up your egg experiment, which is, to me, pretty funny, because that's not even have anything to do with the current discussion. But okay, keep dodging.
You're a pseudoscientist until you can tell me blah, blah, blah about the egg. I mean, what's the egg got to do with it? Forget about the egg. How do you have the gradient in the first place? Oh, well, your mum's a hoe. Oh, really? So no, they'll sweezel it anyway. They'll get out of it no matter what. So don't let them.
They answer questions with questions because they're trying to divert. Yeah.
Someone in Discord, I'll just do a shout out, and there's someone in Discord I think wants to add something. I can see you flashing the quiet riot. Can you say something?
Yes. What do the panel think about the transit of Mercury that's happening right now?
Okay, I'll get their opinions once I've done a quick shout out. So shout out to Dave Rakia Gafford, who says, "When I'm not on mute, I'm here to say God is creator. Rakia life." Thank you very much for your support, Dave Rakia Gafford.
Shout out Rakia.
I would say, how do we see Mercury?
Anyone got any attitudes? Why is it transit of Venus?
Mercury. Transit of Mercury.
Mercury, sorry.
It's just a frequency that we know is a pattern. The Antikythera mechanism tells us a lot of these things that you guys think is predicted by your model. But if you actually try predicting the three-body problem, it's really difficult to do. The computing power required to do it is colossal. And even though you may have it, they get the answers from the Antikythera mechanism, which we could just as easily say is a flat Earth mechanism, in the same way that you'll claim that it's got something to do with heliocentrism. But the fact that it's a cyclical repeating cycle thing doesn't mean that it's anything to do with the shape of the Earth.
What is the cycle, though?
Hold on. What's the claim in this regard? So before we discuss this, what exactly is the claim that's being made in regards to this occultation?
Mercury is transiting the sun as we speak, predicted decades in advance using heliocentric science.
No, not using heliocentric science. There is no science for heliocentrism.
If that is the case, then how is it predicted today?
Hold on, before you ask us how it's being predicted, what precisely is the claim? How does it prove what? What is it proving, and how does it prove it?
Well, the claim would be that if the science surrounding heliocentrism is wrong and incorrect, or even marginally, even fractionally wrong, then they wouldn't have been able to predict this transit as it is happening today.
There is no science around the heliocentric model. Stop saying that.
Well, as easily as I'm saying it, you're saying it's not happening. So you can't really call me on that one.
Can you present what science you're talking about in regards to the heliocentric model?
You could, without getting into the absolute specifics, you could go on like the universe sandbox, and it would match up exactly, predicted as to when the transit would occur, which is today. The next one won't occur until 2032. I'd like to see another method of predicting the transit, which will occur again in 2032, without using orbits or any calculations like that.
Let's just summarise your claim then. So you're saying the heliocentric model predicts that you will see the transit of Mercury, or Mercury occulting the sun, and we do see. I hadn't quite finished. We do see this occultation. Therefore, the Earth is that model. Is that correct?
I'm not saying anything about the shape of the Earth. That's irrelevant to the question.
So what is the question? So that's what I'm asking. What is your claim, and what is it proving, and how does it prove it? And you're saying it's nothing to do with the shape. Well, this is fascinating. Who cares then? You're saying it doesn't prove anything.
But how does it have nothing to do with the shape of the Earth when you infer the heliocentric model? That's already got a shape, right?
Well, he expressly stated it was predicted by the heliocentric science.
Exactly, my point. So how do you say now it doesn't have anything to do with the shape, but that's wrong? So...
Well, the point is that it doesn't matter whether you believe the shape is, if it's flat or if it's round. The premise is that only using science that says that we are on a sphere and that we are orbiting the sun and that Mercury is also orbiting the sun can we predict the actual transit to the second of when it will occur. Okay. If you could predict it for the next one with any other method, I would be happy to hear it.
Dude, that's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. So you're using fallacious reasoning. You're also begging the question.
You're also understand the results of the Antikythera mechanism.
Yeah, they've been predicted long before your model existed, but that's irrelevant because you've used a fallacy to make this claim.
How have they done that?
Because you're saying...
Can you explain specifically how they have predicted that? I'll be very interested to hear a prediction that does not involve orbits or planets or heliocentrism.
Who cares? It doesn't prove anything. What you have used is a fallacious argument. You have affirmed the consequent with a begging the question fallacy. Assuming...
I mean, you can...
Sorry, mate, I'm trying to explain your fallacy. That means you've got to shut up and listen. Does that not... Is it too difficult?
No, go ahead.
Assuming Earth is a sphere model, that would be if P, Earth a sphere, then transit of Mercury, that would be Q. If P, Earth a sphere, transit of Mercury, Q. Transit of Mercury, Q. Therefore Earth a sphere, P. Affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy based on a begging the question fallacy. That would be if the Earth is a sphere. So we would be starting this example with an assumption that Earth's a sphere now, wouldn't we? A begging the question fallacy. So regardless of how these cycles have been predicted in the past or how your assumption of a sphere predicts these cycles, it would be a begging the question, affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. Do you understand?
Yes. Yeah, I agree completely. The fact remains that nobody can tell me how we can predict them without using heliocentric science.
Yeah, Anthony's addressed that. He's told you about models that we used prior to that. The heliocentric
could he be
model
more specific? Because
again, you've made your declaration, having ignored me. Now you're going to talk through the response that you've ignored twice. No, there were models prior to the heliocentric model that predicted these cycles. Can you acknowledge that rather than just stating for the third time that no, it's only heliocentrism, all hail are wrong?
I want you to
I'm
explain
asking what these other models are. Can you please know what they are?
Told
Can you explain?
What did Anthony respond? Let's just check, Anthony. What did Anthony tell you when you stated that the first time and he responded? He mentioned a model. Can you remember what the model was he mentioned? Or weren't you listening?
I've heard a lot of models, so I can't remember specifically the one that he mentioned.
He said it about 3.5 minutes ago. He said it 3.5 minutes ago. I take it you weren't listening to him.
Well, I've already given you that answer.
Yeah, he gave it you about 3.5 minutes ago. I'm checking to see if your comprehension and listening skills are above or below par. And a model was stated to you in response to your claim that only the R value and heliocentrism are the predicting guru of them all. That would be wrong. There were models prior to that. One was detailed to you. You ignored it. And by the sounds of things, didn't even comprehend or listen to it.
I think you're telling the truth there.
I'll jump in here. Just want to jump in if I could just for a second. Airline pilot research, finding the curvature all around the globe. But question for Nathan in the panel.
Who is this? Shut your mouth.
Shut up. What is the sun?
Shut up, whoever you are, you stupid dick. Whoever you are, you're about to get removed if you don't shut your fucking mouth. Shut up! Are you deaf? Did I say, yeah, sure, you just interrupt this conversation and totally hijack it? No, I'm bringing it back on track.
You know why I'm jumping in? Because you're a complete...
No, you're not jumping in. Do you think you can control this show, asshole? No. Anthony will now continue with his pummeling of this dick, who seems to think that heliocentrism is the be-all and end-all of predictive models.
Pummeling dick. Platypus trying to kill each other.
The Quiet Riot, you seem to be singing rather than listening to Anthony repeat what you could not listen to the first time. Go ahead, Anthony.
So you asked what mechanism would it, or how would a flat Earth model predict this, right? Implying that it was only the heliocentric narrative that could. And then I gave you the answer, which was the Antikythera mechanism. And you obviously whistled past that. And I want to know, what do you understand the Antikythera mechanism to be? Do you know what it is?
don't know, but I would be very interested for you to explain to me how you will predict, say, the next transit of Mercury. If you could explain exactly how that Antikythera mechanism will do that, that would be amazing. Thank you.
So you don't know what the Antikythera mechanism is, then, do you?
No, for all I know, you've just made it up right now. So, in light of that, and if we just treat, say, the audience as if they've never heard of it, can you explain exactly how it predicts the transit of Mercury?
Excuse me.
That'd be great.
What? So what? Because he's got something you've never fucking heard of, you think he should now school you, rather than you going away and realising that you're dumb and you've got a religion that you've declared is the be-all and end-all of sky predictions? No, you're just wrong. Shut up!
Put it this way.
Shut up! Not put it this way. Shut your stupid, ignorant mouth. You've been demonstrated to be ignorant. Now don't plead to him to fucking school you. Piss off and realise how fucking wrong you are, you dumb shit!
I don't think you can school me, that's the problem.
No, we're not here to educate thickos.
For like 7 days.
No! We're not here to educate the retards.
Yes.
Yeah, bye-bye. Not here to educate retards. No, you're just wrong. You just think your religion is the only religion, and it's the only mechanism of predicting what happens in the sky. Well, you're wrong. Go away and appreciate just how dumb you are. No, we're not going to teach you about the Antikytherian mechanism. Piss off, you stupid twat.
It was a shame that, Nathan. I really wanted him to. At least he kind of admitted he didn't know about it, but he wanted me to explain it.
You go
I
ahead.
wanted him to admit.
You go ahead. You're just not gonna be interrupted by him non-stop. Going, no. He just doesn't get to take part while you explain whatever you want to explain. You've got the mic, all yours.
So the thing is, the Antikythera mechanism is basically a clock that was found on the bottom of a seabed. I can't remember what sea it was, but it was an ancient clock, hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they worked out that it was something to do with astrological things in the sky. And when they pieced it all back together, and they realised it was chronographing the sky movement of the planets, and I think there was a couple of asteroids that were also in there. Basically, all this stuff that they claim is based on heliocentric science. They've known about it for hundreds of years with a clock mechanism they found at the bottom of I'm going to say the Mediterranean Sea. It's probably not that one. You can quote me on it if you want to, because somebody will look it up and correct me. But the thing is, we've known about these mechanisms that predict these celestial events for years and years and years, and it's got nothing to do with the heliocentric model. It was known by a repeating cycle theme.
Perfect. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Nathan Oakley 1980 live stream, then this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making this live show possible. As I say, stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley channel, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!